Go ahead and get started, and we have a few new faces tonight, which is wonderful. So I always just take this opportunity to say this is a presentation that's put on by the care team, Community Advocates Reaching Everyone, and we are trying to support mental health in rural Nebraska. And we want people to have healthy minds and healthy bodies, and we hope by providing some education we can help with that process. And so we have been fortunate enough to have Janie Pfeiffer-Watson here in the past, and she's a very good presenter in addition to having good crowds, and so we're super excited to have her back. But I do want to put one plug in before we get started. We also, I mentioned this last time, but this is a good group, Love and Logic. We are bringing to St. Paul in October. It's every Monday, the month of October. And if it's something that you're interested in, you can contact me up at the hospital. I will have application forms. We'll start advertising it in the paper probably, August time frame. And so just kind of keep your eyes posted for that. And so we will have a little drawing at the end for some of her books. So if you fill out your evaluation form, we'll do a drawing for her books. So just stick around for that. We actually still have a few from last time.
Yeah, like, where'd you get those?
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to let Jamie take it over. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love that you are in the physical world and you merge the mental world because it all goes together. So I really appreciate your efforts and your whole team effort. So I'm Janie Pfeiffer-Watson. I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker. I started private practice in 1992 and then opened Wholeness Healing Center in 1998. So we are now celebrating 20 years. So we had a big open house for Valentine's Day because our motto is heart-centered wellness for life. So in case I forget to tell you, we brought you some stress balls and some good healthy heart granola. And so please help yourself before you leave so that you can help in our celebration of our 20 years. So we have 3 offices. Our home office is in Grand Island, and then we have an office in Kearney and Broken Bow because we too believe in servicing the rural areas and work hard to do that. We employ 15 therapists. We have 4 support staff, and we offer traditional counseling as well as adjunct holistic services. So that would look like we have hypnotherapy, and we offer hypnosis and hypnotherapy groups for weight release and healthy living, as well as smoking cessation. We offer neurofeedback, which is brain training to train your brain to be more optimal, and we offer mindfulness courses. So we offer an 8-week course for adults, and I'll talk about that again, which is a heavy-duty course. It's based on MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is the real deal, and it's well worth your time if you choose to take that course. We also offer children mindfulness courses and adolescent mindfulness courses, and those are 1-hour courses that last 9 weeks. And any of the therapists that do facilitate those trainings have actually been through the 8-week course themselves, because you don't learn mindfulness in the head, you learn it by practicing. And so I don't want it watered down, and we kind of stick to those principles. And I would say at least half of our staff has been trained in the 8-week course. So we also offer wellness services, although I would call all those wellness services. But if you just want to come in because you want to de-stress and you don't want to do therapy or anything, we have a Megan massage facility. So it's a Megan bed, massage bed that you lay on, and it's got hot, warm jaded stones that roll up and down your body and help align your spine, and it can be very relaxing. We also have an energy enhancement system, and that is a room with about 8 reclining chairs, and it looks like you have eight computer screens, 2 on the 4 walls, but that's not exactly what they are. They're actually set up so that they are perfectly aligned and they create scalar energy. And scalar energy is a column energy, so when you walk into the room, you kind of feel like you're surrounded with, I can feel it. I feel like my cells start dancing a little, and it starts to increase the frequency of your cells. There's a lot of scientific evidence around it. And so you can go in there, relax. We suggest you go in for your first session for a couple hours and rest, and maybe you'll be detoxing, so you might be uncomfortable, because as your cells, the cell frequency increases, you might get your cells detoxing. And we offer everybody a free session in that room, so anybody can walk in off the street, and I brought some information about it. I just learned that Sandra Rose Michaels, who created all this, sold 11,000 of these systems to the VA for PTSD veterans. And we have it right here in a 4-state area. We're the only one in the Midwest that has that. And I don't promote it enough. We encourage people to go sit down there when they're just hanging out at our place. And we all enjoy it, but I would encourage you to give it a shot. So that's one of our wellness programs. And then we also have an EAP program, which is an employee assistance program, and an administrator that goes out and talks to businesses to sell our services as a benefit to the employees. So it's very inexpensive and very worthwhile thing for businesses. And so if they buy that for their employees, then the employees and their families all get free sessions at our place, for any of our services. So I have to make little notes because I don't remember. We do a lot of things at our place, and I'm just encouraging you to come over and visit us. So tonight we're going to talk about rethink your stress response with mindfulness. Cultivate calm and clarity. So I'm going to be on my soapbox because this is one of my favorite things. So we're going to first start with mindful listening. So what I'd like you to do is just take a deep breath and close your eyes and just check in with yourself right now. How much stress did you come in with tonight? What is your stress level right now as you sit here? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most stressful, where are you at tonight? And just give yourself a number as you just check in. Sometimes we don't even know where we're at until we check in. And then continuing to keep your eyes closed, we're going to do some mindful listening. And if you're comfortable with your eyes closed, to close them. Otherwise, just look down on the floor a few feet in front of you, just to keep out the distractions. And I'm going to be ringing the bell 3 times. So you're going to hear the sounds, and see if you can listen to the sound with all your attention. So with your ears and your mind and your heart and your body. And then stay attuned to the sound as it fades and you can't hear it anymore. Now, before you open your eyes, take a moment to listen to the quiet underneath the sound. And take a moment to check in, sensing into the body, noticing places that are comfortable, noticing places that may be uncomfortable. Noticing any awareness of thoughts, opinions, or judgments that may be present. And welcoming yourself as you are. Noticing emotions that may be present. Maybe Maybe there's excitement or curiosity or uncomfortableness. Whatever it is right now. And just pausing now to dwell in the direct experience in this moment. And when you're ready, coming back to the room. So we'll go ahead and continue now with it. We're going to be targeting these things today. Tonight we're going to define stress. We're going to reframe how we view stress and our response to stress. And then we're going to look at some mindful approaches to deal with life stressors. So hopefully you're going to leave here with some practical skills and some tools and some strategies on how to deal with life in a better way for yourself. So what is stress? We say it all the time, don't we? I'm stressed, this is a stressful event, I'm really, kind of worked up over this. We all know what we mean when we say we're stressed, but what does it really mean? The word actually was coined in 1936 by Evenhand Saley, who told reporters that everybody knows what stress is, but nobody really knows. And as it's true, right? We all know what it means to us. So medical dictionaries define it this way: the body's reaction to any change that requires an adjustment or response. The body reacts to these changes with physical, mental, and emotional responses. And that's why when Dr. Brendan's talking about the mental health and the physical health, they all merge. They all merge. So what this really means, I think, for stress is there's a demand associated with this situation. And that could be internally perceived demand, because we're really good at causing ourselves some stress even if the event's not there yet, right? So when we say an internally perceived demand, it might be memories, associations about something that's coming up, and we're thinking about past history, worries, self-limiting concepts. I can't do that, Or it could be an external demand, like getting out of the way of a speeding car, or doing poorly on a test, or having difficulty with a loved one. But whether it's internally perceived or an external demand, stress hits us and our bodies react. So what we do know is stress is a physical expression of our fight or flight survival mechanisms. And I'm going to be using that term a lot tonight, because fight or flight is when we kick in and we're activated to like if we're going to go through the intersection on a green light and there's a car coming, we get an adrenaline dump and we put on the brakes and we're like, oh my gosh, and you can feel it in the body. So maybe it's not always that obvious when we're kicking into this, but that's what happens. A threatening situation will trigger a stress response which prepares us to confront or flee a possible danger. And this keeps us safe, right? I mean, this goes back thousands of years, and this is all about our survival. But we could also be triggered by tense situations where physical action is not an option, such as an unreasonable boss, or financial problems, or relationship issues. That can trigger us. Our adult child can call us on the phone, and you can tell by listening to them that things aren't good. And you can feel your body kind of. But the thing is, not all stress is bad, and I think you probably all know that as well. Stress can work for us. So because we use the word stress to describe negative events, it kind of leads us to believe oftentimes that stress is all bad for you, but that's not the truth. Some stress actually increases our capacity to perform or function or produce at a very high level. So when there's a need and you have to mount your resources and produce, sometimes stress kicks you in gear and gets you going, and so the deadline actually helps you get there, right? You think more clearly, you write more clearly, you bring in your resources that, talk to your colleagues to get things done more directly. And we would call that eustress, positive stress. It motivates us, it's often short-term, and it improves our performance. The student that says they don't mind staying up all night to write their paper, that's the way they operate the best. That's that kind of stress. I don't operate that way, but I operate better. I perform with positive stress, but I have to be done early. I don't want that stress of thinking I might not make it. Then there's distress, which is a negative stress that has the following characteristics. It causes anxiety, and it's unpleasant. It doesn't feel very good. Usually it's long-term and often decreases our performance. And it may lead to mental and physical problems, and it is perceived outside our coping abilities. So the eustress is perceived as something we can manage. It's perceived as something within our coping mechanisms, and distress is perceived as something we can't quite get to. So there's lots of things that cause stress, and everybody personally responds and reacts to stress in a different way, but some of the things that could be considered, well, and the other piece to that is you may not even be aware of how it's impacting you. If you're in stress all the time, you might not know when you're not in stress, right? Or, if you're never in stress, you certainly know what it feels like to be in stress. I don't see too many people in my office that are not stressed. But, what I noticed is the more I do mindfulness, the more I can tell when my body's going to react to a stress event. So that being said, that we got to get to that point. But some of the things that can cause negative stress: the death of a spouse, filing for divorce, the death of a family member, hospitalization in the family or illness, being abused or neglected, separation from a spouse or a committed relationship partner, conflict in interpersonal relationships, which is always big for everybody. Our interpersonal relationships impact us a lot. A lot of our stress is tied up in that. Bankruptcy, money problems, unemployment, sleep problems, children's problems, legal problems. Some examples of positive personal stressors would be starting a new job, marriage, buying a home, having a child, moving, taking a vacation. Who would have ever thought that was on the list? But that really does make you mount resources, right? You get a lot of stuff done to prepare to go. Holiday seasons. I don't know if that should be on the positive or the negative. Again, that is how you take it on and how you operate within that. Retiring. Taking educational classes or learning a new hobby. And then, of course, work and employment concerns are often frequent causes of distress. So, excessive job demands, job insecurity, conflicts with teammates and supervisors, inadequate authority to carry out necessary tasks, because you can't do that, can you? That puts you in an impossible situation. Lacking training you need, unproductive and time-consuming meetings. But what I want to say here is that we don't want to conclude that stress is just bad. Some pressure can work for us, and we got to remember that. Kelly McGonigal did a TED Talk on how to make stress your friend. And the reason she did this talk was because she's a psychologist, health psychologist, and she presented information about a study. So the study tracked 30,000 adults in the United States for 8 years. And they started by asking people, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? And then they asked them, do you believe that stress is bad for you? Harmful for your health, exactly. And then they used the public death records to see who died the next year. The study showed that people who experienced a lot of stress in the previous year had a 43% increased risk of dying. That's pretty high. But that was only true for the people who thought stress was harmful for their health. If the people had experienced a lot of stress the year before but did not view stress as harmful for their health, they were more likely to die. Their risk was not high. In fact, it was lower than those who had little stress. I find this to be very empowering information because I think life is tough and hard, and it's, sometimes you think, how are we going to get through all this, you know? And what this is saying is how we perceive and appraise it matters. And if we can perceive and appraise things in a different way, we can manage things in a better way for ourselves. So her radical suggestion was befriend it. So she's saying what we say in mindfulness. In mindfulness, we say lean into it. If you're uncomfortable, sit with it. Notice the characteristics of what you're feeling. Notice your thoughts. Notice your emotions. If you're sitting and you're doing a mindful sitting posture and it's uncomfortable, which it can be, and you get an itch, they say just sit with the itch. Notice the itch. Don't itch it. Just sit with it. Let yourself be uncomfortable. Lean into it. Get to know the itch. Or if you're, you know what I find a good example for myself is when I'm sitting on the cushion in mindfulness for an extended period of time, it can be really uncomfortable. Some days it's easy, some days it's not. But it's kind of like when you're doing a yoga pose and it's really tight and you just kind of sit with it and then the muscle eventually releases. You just sit with it. So we're talking about noticing it, befriending it, and learning about it. We're talking about how to be in the world of stress and be okay. So how we perceive it and appraise it reflects on how we manage it. So stress is a person's physical and emotional response to change, right? So stress helps us mount our resources to manage a situation. It causes chemical changes in the body that, left unchecked, can have a negative effect on both the mental and physical health of yourself. High levels of stress contribute to health issues as diverse as depression, insomnia, heart disease, skin disorders, headaches. Acute stress is a short-term response by the body's sympathetic nervous system. And how long acute stress would last could vary. It could be a couple weeks, it could be a couple minutes. But the response eventually is done. So during an acute stress response, there's a cascade of physiological events that follow this internal, largely unconscious process. We're not really paying attention to that when that's happening in our body. So the body's flooded with hormones necessary to prepare us to effectively meet the perceived threat. So at this stage, the body becomes hyper-aroused, blood pressure may rise, pulse increases, the blood is moved from some parts of the body to other parts to help with this, meet the threat. And this can happen whether it's a perceived threat internally or whether it's an external threat. The body is beautifully designed to be dynamic and fluid and flexible in terms of its capacity to meet ongoing changes. So then hopefully, after we've managed the situation, we can let down. And we can allow our parasympathetic nervous system to take over and tell our body it's all okay, we're safe, we don't need to mount all these resources, and we rebalance into a homeostatic place. The chemicals get replenished and life can go on and we can feel okay. We got through it. And if you're really paying attention to your body, you're going to start to notice maybe after one of those events you're going to be tired, you're going to need to take a nap, or you need to go to bed early, you need a good night's sleep, you need some water because you didn't drink during that whole time, and things get back to normal, right? However, this quote might be meaningful to some. Mark Twain said, "I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happened." Does that fit for anybody? Does anybody get caught in their head with all these scenarios and then they find themselves all worked up? And, you know, I grew up in a home where I shouldn't say this, but having company was a big deal to my mother because she went all out. You know, cooking, cleaning, everything. Everything had to be perfect. And it was not a fun time. She was very stressed getting it all done. She had 6 children, so I can understand all that, from a different perspective now. But I kind of learned that pattern as well. When people were coming, am I going to get, it's taken a lot of work for me to just decide, man, I don't really care about the house, and let's just. I want to be able to sit with people when they arrive, and when you have all that stress mounting internally, you create this big scenario before anybody ever gets to the house. You are exhausted. It's really hard to, right? And that's a very simple little example of what we do inside ourselves when we worry. It's usually bigger worries than that, but it can go all the way down to everything we do, right? So worry and anxiety aren't always based in reality. It's often based on expecting the worst to happen. So anxiety is virtually all anticipatory, and almost all anxiety involves thought. Like, what if this happens? What if that happens? And usually it's always the worst case scenarios, right? We're not thinking about, oh, something grand's going to happen most of the time when we're in our head. So you need to realize that our bodies, do not discriminate between that internal event and the external event. Our bodies are responding to all those thoughts, just as if they're happening. Now that's a scary thought, right? I mean, we're relieved when those bad things don't happen, but we put our body through all that. And it doesn't feel good, and it's not healthy. So this slide speaks to our internal stressful event that promotes us to mount our resources and kicks us into fight or flight. So if we don't let down and regroup, or if the situation ends up not being short-term, we move into the next stressful situation after that, and we feel like we have to mount our resources again, and the body doesn't replenish and rebalance, and we stay in fight or flight mode. And it continues as it is, moving and dumping hormones and chemicals into the system. And I could have went into all that different stuff. But we've moved then into chronic stress, which is long-term and the main cause of health-related problems. So you might think you're going to see Dr. Brennan because it's physical, but it probably started emotionally and mentally, because we're managing things in a way that's not good for us. So one of the things that the ongoing stress response causes is the release of more cortisol. So that's the only chemical I'm going to talk about tonight. Cortisol is one of those hormones associated with waking and sleeping. So levels of cortisol naturally fluctuate during the day, and they're highest, if you're in good balance, they should be highest in the morning because that helps you wake up. Lowest at night when you want to be going to sleep. So when chronic stress stimulates cortisol production, the daily cycle of cortisol is disrupted. So high levels of cortisol may occur at night, which results in insomnia. So one of the first things we talk about when people come in to see us is, how are you sleeping? And if you're not sleeping, what are we going to do to get your sleep in order? Because without good sleep, we don't have a lot to work with. It's just really difficult. And so continued exposure to this chronic state of hyperarousal requires the body to mount a series of maladaptive coping strategies. So, you keep this stress going and going and going, you're going to have some ways to get through it. And there's probably been a time in your life when the pattern you use that are now maladaptive work for you. They probably served you at one point. However, they create an unhealthy condition of chronic hyperarousal and incur health risks. So that creates more physical and psychological strain. So leading to this, we have exhaustion and depletion of coping resources and making us less capable of effectively coping with stress, which perpetuates the cycle of health risk. So you have a bad moment and then you just keep on going and going. So what are some maladaptive coping strategies? Emotionally, you might become easily agitated, frustrated, and moody. You might feel overwhelmed or have difficulty relaxing and quieting your mind. That is said so often. People do not know how to just let down. Feeling bad about yourself, low self-esteem, lonely, worthless, and depressed. You might want to avoid others. Physical symptoms. Low weighted, upset stomach, diarrhea. Any of the stomach stuff is also psychosomatic often, and it's caused stress. Would you say that? Yes. Aches, pains, intense muscles, chest pain, and rapid heartbeat. I've had many people that I've worked with tell me they went to the ER for heart palpitations or heart pain, thinking they were having a heart attack, and they weren't. And they're like, that's really a scary place to be, right? You think you might be having a heart attack, and then it isn't. So, I mean, that's very common, and you don't know what you have. Insomnia, frequent colds and infections. Stress beats down on your immune system. Loss of sexual desire or ability, nervousness and shaking, ringing in the ear, cold or sweaty hands and feet, dry mouth and difficult swallowing, clenched jaw and grinding teeth. So, other things that might, habits that might come into play. We might find it harder to cope with situations, so we work longer. We got too much at work, so we just stay longer. Or perhaps we're now sacrificing the hours we sleep. Or we're trying to gain relief by using substance. So we go to the bar every night after work. Or we just, our glass of wine is increasing to 4. Overeating. You know, we sit down in front of the TV with a bag of chips and we numb out. Watching more TV. You know, maybe we're not a TV person, but we sit in front of the TV and we're just kind of glazed over. Or maybe instead of adding things in, you're taking things out. Maybe you've reduced the time that you're going to do your exercise. Or you're eating poorly. Or you're isolating from your support system. So when you should be going out and balancing things out and having some time with your friends, you're like, I'm not going to do that, I don't have time. So we kind of just, it just becomes this unending cycle, and it exasperates it. But the other piece, this is a side note, and our newsletter, our 20-year newsletter is all about heart-centered wellness. And one of the articles is about our reaction or response to stress and how we manage our emotions and our stress may be a bigger indicator of heart disease than smoking, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. So much so that there is now evidence regarding this link, and they have created a new area of psychology called cardiac psychology. So I'm telling you guys tonight, this is where it's at. How you manage your stress and what you do to make things work better for you is life-changing. And, you know, you can wait till whenever, but eventually stress takes you to your knees if you're not managing it. So this is important, and I find it to be very empowering information. How we perceive and appraise the situation will impact the quality of stress we experience. So, with this, with the stress of getting a job done, if we're mobilized around this, if we're interested in what we're doing, or if we're even just disciplined around it, like I'm just going to get this done, I'm going to stay on my schedule and get it done, that in itself helps us move forward. Yet, if we take it on as, I'm overwhelmed, I don't have resources for this, this is a whole other way of perceiving a situation. So, thanks, Jared. I brought my husband. He's also the sheriff. He's also the sheriff. So he needs a little stress reduction. So how we think about the situation is going to impact how stressful it becomes. Do we put an unpleasant twist to it, an unpleasant thought with it? Do we consider it something we can handle? But underneath all of that is, are we even aware that we're appraising a situation? Are we even aware that when the boss walked in, our whole body changed and we knew we were going to be given a project, and we just know it's going to be awful, and we're going to be overwhelmed. All that happens like in a split second. And most of the time, unless you're working on it, you're not noticing that. You just have this reaction within you, you don't even know where it came from. Because appraisals of a situation are driven by habit, pattern, past instances, unconditioned reactions. It happens instantaneously, unconsciously, and without deliberation. Which to me, if you hear that, you think, oh, there's no hope, right? I like the idea that there's something we can do about these situations that we grew up with, developed, and you know, it's a conditioned pattern. If I'm getting company, I should probably get very upset and worked up and get things going. And you know, I was a conditioned pattern from past instances. In mindfulness, though, what we're working on is putting a gap where we consciously perceive the situation, appraise it, and make deliberate choices on how we respond. So we're working on practicing being liberated in small and large ways from our conditioned reactions. And what may have been productive at one time in our life may not be so good now. May be counterproductive to our well-being. So it could look like this. You have your stimulus, the event, and then you have a reaction. We all do it. What we're working for is a stimulus and a gap where we can make a choice in how we respond. And another way of looking at that is this. That gap is our freedom to choose the response. And with that freedom to choose comes much better interactive and effective ways of dealing with others and dealing with situations. So when we practice mindfulness, we begin to insert a space of awareness and widen that gap a bit. And over time we see that our response time grows. And when it does, we find more ability to respond and react differently. And with more awareness and more choice, we have more intellectual, intelligent, compassionate responses that naturally come forth. Because something that comes forth in practicing mindfulness is we learn when we're being judgmental with ourselves, we notice judgments with others, and we just start to have more compassion with ourselves because we realize, you know, we're doing a lot of hard work here. Viktor Frankl was an Australian neurologist and psychiatrist, as well as a Holocaust survivor for 3 years. And during that time, he lost his parents, his wife, and his brother in the camps. And he went on to write Man's Search for Meaning and develop logotherapy. And he says, between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. And so what he's saying is pause. Paying attention to what's going on in this moment right now so we can make good choices in how we want to respond. So, you know, if we were going to draw it out, we'd have the S here, an S, and then we just have an R right next to it. Like, boom. We have a stimulus and we react. It is so split second. So as you just learn to breathe and notice what's going on inside yourself, notice what's going on in your environment, you also can say, oh, I can feel I'm reacting. I'm not going to do that. Pause. I'm going to make another choice. So guess how we do that? My favorite, mindfulness. So we do various practices to develop the capacity to do mindfulness. It does require training. You have to train and practice to do this. So mindfulness is an attitude towards experience, to be aware of whatever's happening in this moment. So we can be mindful when the mind is quite agitated, and jumping all over the place. We just say, oh, I am not focused today. Oh, there I am on another thought. Oh, there's another thought. And oh, I'm agitated. I can feel my muscles are tense. Or we can be mindful when the mind is focused and concentrated. Oh, I'm doing a really good job of staying focused here. You know, I can see that it's a good day today, I'm focused. But you're witness to your own thoughts. You can be mindful when the heart and mind are sad, when there's anger, when there's fear, when there's tranquility. So mindfulness is not about chilling out and being in a state of bliss. I am sorry to tell you. It is not that. It is about having this different attitude towards your experience right here, right now. So we use various practices to develop and hone mindfulness. And when we do this, we realize we can be with painful experiences in a different way. And, you know, to me, that's huge. Because I don't think there's too many people around that don't have pain during their daily life at some point. And when we can learn how to lean into that and embrace it and be okay, in the midst of the tornado, we can stay centered and calm with it. We can say, oh, there's a tornado. Oh, it's feeling like it's going to get pretty rowdy around here. Oh, okay. You know, you can just learn how to lean into it. We can lean into uncomfortableness. So mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So we're setting an intention to pay attention. So we're going to do some mindful eating. So I'm going to guide you through this process. This is a formal practice of mindfulness, which we do in our course. And I'll give you a little taste of it. So this is a formal mindfulness practice that's going to involve you becoming more familiar with the raisins you received. Did everybody get some? Okay.
Okay, who ate the raisins?
Okay, you did you guys
saved ours. We were just waiting. Who ate the raisins?
See, now look at that. So what I want you to non-judgmentally think about is that was just a habitual reaction and response, right? Most of us, when we are given something, we just eat it. And I do have a funny joke about it. It's not really a joke. I started the mindfulness children's group with a little pilot group that was included my two 10-year-old grandchildren. And then my granddaughter went through it again after we had some bigger groups going. And she was home over Christmas and we had goodies setting out, and I came home from work and I grabbed my favorite goodie and plopped it into my mouth and ate it. And she says, "Grandma." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Did you even think about eating that mindfully?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Were you even hungry?" And I thought for a minute. I said, "No." And I said, "You know, that's one thing I'm not good at yet. I have not learned how to remember to eat mindfully every time." And she says, "Grandma, I'm just shocked about that." You know, we teach what we need to learn, right? So I told her that. I said, "Well, you teach what you need to learn. I haven't learned it all yet, Daddy." So, but I'm trying to be better about it. Okay, so these are moments when we can actually pay attention on purpose without judgment. So let's begin with the formal exploration through a medium that we all know, which is eating. So you've all seen raisins and you have an opinion of raisins. Pick up one of these raisins, and from here on out, see if you can suspend all of the associations that you have with raisins. See it freshly, only as an object. So often we speak of this as beginner's mind. It's like meeting situations that are familiar with a freshness in new ways. So from here on out, I'm going to use the term object rather than raisin. picking up one of these objects as you feel ready and noticing it in your hand, maybe between your index finger and your thumb, and seeing what you notice. Of course, the mind's going to fill in with past experiences, with memories, with conditioned ideas. This is all normal. And you don't need to stop the associative process, but just each time that you notice it, carrying you away, see if you can come back to the actuality of this object in your hand as if you've seen it for your first time. I'd like to say as if you're an alien that has arrived on Earth seeing it for the first time. Explore the color and the shape and the feeling between your fingers. Explore listening. You may not notice any sound. How about if you roll the object between your fingers? Just taking all your time. Maybe you notice new shades of color or various shades of color or structure that you didn't see before, or tactile structures. Or maybe you notice something happening in the mouth, or maybe in the belly. So we're learning to actually become familiar directly rather than conceptually. So conceptually would be all the things we know about this object from the past. But directly is what is being known right now from the fingertips and through the fingertips. And what is being known from bringing the object up to your nose and smelling it. And what is being known by looking deeply into the object. This is direct knowing. And there need not be any judgments about it with yourself or the object. There might be judgments in the mind because the mind does that, but for now, simply seeing what it's like, not necessarily biting on the old habitual references, but instead being in relationship to this object. And when you feel ready, bringing the object up to your mouth and maybe placing it just between the lips but not in your mouth. And what do you notice now? What's happening in the mouth? What about the belly? And when you feel ready, bringing the object into the mouth. How did it get there? Did the lip push it backwards into the mouth? Did the tongue come forward and carry the object back into the mouth? Where is it in the mouth? How does the object feel in comparison to how it felt between your fingers? And when you feel ready, placing it between the teeth, but not yet biting it if you can help it. If you've already bitten it, that's okay too. If you've already swallowed it before you ever knew it, you can take another object and continue. A lot of what happens in our life is automatic. And what we're attempting to do is become more familiar and more attentive so that our actions and our choices become more deliberate, more conscious, more responsive. And when you feel ready, how about taking one bite? What has happened? What have you noticed? What about flavor and saliva and fragrance? What's happening in the belly? And what do you notice in the mouth? And feel free to continue to chew, seeing if you can chew without yet swallowing, so that when you do swallow, the swallowing is deliberate. It is chosen. And when you feel ready, swallowing. And noticing what it feels like when the object goes from the mouth down deeper into the body. And what was your experience with eating with focused attention? How was that for you?
Slower.
Slower than the first one.
There's more flavor.
More flavor. Does anybody not like raisins?
Well, you see, I was kind of left out because I didn't think that was a raisin. I thought it was maybe a plum or
Well,
a
it's
prune.
it shows all the texture, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it's like a prune.
Did you have your raisins though?
What?
Did you work with the raisins?
I did.
You were disappointed.
Huh?
There was a disappointment there?
It wasn't fantastic.
So I have to tell you, I personally, way back when don't like raisins.
Oh,
So whenever I would do this exercise in our groups, our DBT groups, we would do this, I would always make sure there was chocolate too. So people could pick. But what happened is after you go through all these trainings and you eat raisins mindfully forever, you know, I realized I did like them.
oh.
When all the associations of the past as a child were put aside and I just focused on the raisin, well, they're okay. I mean, I would probably rather have chocolate. I like raisins. This is an example of one of our formal practices of mindfulness, and it's also what you could do as an informal practice because you can mindfully eat if you catch it before it goes down, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of benefits of mindfulness. Mindfulness helps you lose weight and encourages healthier eating habits when you work on that. It boosts your immune system because it keeps you from being in that stress reaction. It increases positive emotions and decreases negative emotions, including stress. It fights depression. It reduces the effect of PTSD. It increases the density of gray matter in our brains, which is linked to empathy, emotional regulation, learning, and memory. It improves focus. It increases compassion. And it improves relationships. So research on mindfulness, this is based on 47 studies from the Journal of American Medicine Association, Internal Medicine. And these are just some of it that they found. It slows down the deterioration of the brain. That's a pretty darn big deal. Increases brain size. Boosts the immune system. Improves intelligence and memory. It reduces stress. And it prevents relapse of anxiety disorder and depression. And there is a lot of studies done on this. So, I mean, I could give you a lot more information. I took some of the slides out on all the research, but it's been scientifically worked on. John Kabat-Zinn brought mindfulness to in the Western world in about 40 years ago at the at the University of Massachusetts, and he developed it in the hospital for chronic stress. And so now they're just, you know, they're doing studies. It's all over the world now. So mindfulness is different than most interventions. We have to develop the muscle to be with what is. So usually the focus of treatment is to decrease the intensity of something that's unpleasant, right? So in our medical model today, the idea is make it hurt less so that we're more comfortable. And sometimes, you know, we're looking for a magic pill or a magic solution, but mindfulness takes a different tact. It's about, let's increase my capacity to be with difficulty so that I'll have the resilience to handle what comes and goes. So one of the ways it's done is simply by developing the muscle of being with pain. And I already told you this part. When we're sitting in mindfulness and we have some pain, we just spend some time with it. You know, your bodies get tired when you're sitting, you know, at times. And okay, so what's that pain about? Is it something I really need to change my position and fix, or can I sit with it a little bit? And I'm not saying that you do mindfulness and all of a sudden it's just like, oh my gosh, I can really manage pain. What really happens is that you become aware of more pain. Because we learn all kinds of coping mechanisms how not to be present with what's uncomfortable. So what we first work on in mindfulness is how to be present and aware. And when people come in and they come in to do the course and it's on chronic, and they have chronic stress, what they find the first few sessions is that the pain's there, if not worse, because they're much more aware. Or they find out they don't want to be present. You know, it's like, why would I want to learn to be present? Because it's very uncomfortable. We are more apt to be unpresent than most of us realize. So it becomes a way to manage chronic pain and emotional pain and just plain life. So now we're going to do another little exercise. It's short. So as you're thinking about this, we have time, don't we? Okay. As you're thinking about how long this is, I'm telling you it's so short, we're going to do a little body scan. So when we do our mindfulness course, our 8-week course, we do a body scan that is, the first week is 45 minutes and the second week is 50 minutes. And normally people are laying down on yoga mats and we encourage them to have something under their knees or under their neck so they're comfortable, and maybe a little blanket to be warm, but not too comfortable because you don't really need to fall asleep, right? But we're going to do this sitting, and a lot of people do sit when they're not comfortable lying down. So before we begin, just take some time to get yourself comfortable. And just make sure you're able to let the chair support you completely. Try to have good posture with your spine upright, your neck balanced. So if you feel comfortable to do so, close your eyes or else focus on a spot in the room. And take a few moments to get in touch with the movement of your breath and the sensations in the body. And when you're ready, bring awareness to your physical sensations in the body, especially to the sensations of touch or pressure where your body makes contact with the chair. And notice the chair supporting you. And on each out breath, allow yourself to let go, to sink a little deeper into the chair. There's no right way to feel while you're doing this. The way you're feeling is fine. It's just the way you're feeling. Simply accept it and giving yourself permission to feel whatever it is you're feeling. And remind yourself of the intention of this practice. Its aim is not to feel any different, relaxed, or calm, although this may happen, or it may not. Instead, the intention of the practice is, as best you can, to bring awareness to any sensation you detect as you focus your attention on each part of the body. So now bring your attention to the fact that you're breathing, not changing the breath in any way, but simply experiencing the air as it comes into and out of the body. Becoming aware of the abdomen rising as the air comes into the body and falling as the air moves out of the body. Not controlling the breath in any way. Rather just becoming aware of the natural rhythm and flow of the breath. And noticing that as the breath flows naturally, the abdomen lifts with each in-breath and falls with each out-breath. And having connected with the sensations in the abdomen, bring the focus or spotlight of your awareness down the left leg, into the left foot, and out to the toes of the left foot. And focus on each of the toes in the left foot, one at a time. And bringing a gentle curiosity to investigate the quality of the sensations you find. Perhaps noticing the sense of contact between the toes, a sense of tingling, warmth, or no particular sensation at all. And when you're ready, on an in-breath, feel or imagine the breath entering the lungs and then passing down into the abdomen, into the left leg, the left foot, and out to the toes of the left foot. And then on the out-breath, feel or imagine the breath coming all the way back up, out the foot, into the leg, up through the abdomen, chest, and out through the nose. As best you can, continue this for a few breaths, breathing down into the toes and back out from the toes. Just practice this breathing in as best you can, approaching it playfully. And now when you're ready on an out breath, let the awareness of the toe, let go of the awareness of the toes and bring your awareness to the sensations at the bottom of your left foot. Bringing a gentle investigative awareness to the sole of the foot, the instep, the heel. Noticing the sensations where the heel makes contact with the mat or bed or the floor. Experiment with breathing the sensations. Being aware of the breath in the background, as in the foreground, you explore the sensations of the lower foot. Now allow the awareness to expand into the rest of the foot, to the ankle, the top of the foot, and right into the bones and joints. And then taking a slightly deeper breath, directing it down into the whole of the left foot. And as the breath lets go on the out breath, let go of the left foot completely, allowing the focus of awareness to move into the lower left leg, the calf, the shin, the knee, and so on in turn. So continue to bring awareness and a gentle curiosity to the physical sensations in each part of the rest of the body in turn. To the upper left leg, the right toes, the right foot, the right leg, moving into the pelvic area and the hips, the back, and in the front to the abdomen, the chest, shoulders, and then moving down both arms, down to noticing the fingers, the hands, arms, and back up to the shoulders. Spending a little moment with the neck, noticing what you carried in with the neck today. Any tension, just breathing into it. Your head and the face. In each area, as best you can, bring the same detailed level of awareness and gentle curiosity to the bodily sensations present. And as you leave each major area, breathe in to it on the in-breath and let go of the region on the out-breath. And when you become aware of tension or other intense sensations in a particular part of the body, you can breathe into that area, using the in-breath gently to bring awareness right into the sensation. And as best you can, have a sense of their letting go or releasing on the out-breath. And the mind's going to invariably wander away from the breath and the body from time to time, and that's entirely normal. It is what minds do. And when you notice it, gently acknowledge it. Notice where the mind's gone off to, and then gently return your attention to the part of the body you intended to focus on. And now, after having scanned the whole body in this way, just spend a few moments being aware of a sense of the body as a whole, and of the breath flowing in and out of the body. And as we come to the end of the practice, slowly begin to expand your awareness of your body. See yourself as complete right now. Become aware of your position and the physical sensations. And we'll begin to wiggle your toes and fingers and drawing your attention out and expanding it to the room, to your position, slowly allowing the light to bring you back to the room. Become aware of the sounds around you. And slowly open your eyes and take in a gentle stretch if needed. So how was that? It was what?
Relaxing.
Relaxing?
I didn't want to come back.
Yeah.
So it was, you were able to be very mindful through the process and it got you to a place of calm. Anybody have a hard time with it? What was your experience?
Well, it started out good, but then it started wondering of all the things going on.
Oh, so you noticed your mind wandering, and then were you able to bring back to your attention back?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is at the beginning your mind wasn't wandering much,
No.
and then it started wandering like minds do. And the longer it goes, the more the mind wanders, and so that's really normal. And then you notice it. So just noticing the wandering mind was a mindful moment, and then you bring it back. Okay, back, where's she at? I skipped my ankle, where are we at? Okay, you know. So that's part of the discipline of training your brain. And we've already talked about the fact that mindfulness develops compassion. There's different forms of mindfulness. So the formal practices that we talk about are the body scans, mindful movement, which is really a very mindful stretching yoga. We do sitting practice and we do breathing, focusing on breath. Informal practices, okay, this is when you start to become aware of body sensation. You start to notice what's going on in the body. You're just noticing it. You're going through your day and oh, there's a twinge in my knee. You start to become aware of your thoughts. Just notice what you're thinking. You notice your emotions and sensory input during the day. You notice the sounds, or you notice how it feels to touch this particular item. Or the smells. You spend some time in the smelling things. So practice in ordinary activities like eating, washing your hand, brushing your teeth. So you might want to do something like decide every morning when I walk out the front door or the back door to go to work and get in my car, that's going to trigger that I'm going to work right now for 5 minutes on being mindful of everything I do. How did it feel to walk down the steps to get it out into the garage? How did it feel to open the car door? That was kind of heavy. Noticing exactly what's going on. So you might want to trigger yourself when you're taking your shower. Every morning or every evening when you take a shower or a bath, how it feels to just get into the water, what the water feels like on the body, and how it felt to wash your hair. So you just kind of trigger informal practices throughout the day so that you start to train your mind to be aware of moment and in this moment right here, right now. So anytime you go through the senses, you're being mindful right here, right now. So if you get stuck with, well, I don't know what to do, start listening to the sounds. Or notice all the things in the room that are red. Or, just do something like to bring yourself through the senses, and that will help you go. Or you can always focus on breath. So we're going to do one more practice. This is a really simple little practice, and I think everybody should learn it and put it in their back pocket and put it, wear it every day. So it's like your DNA, and you go to it when you start to get stressed. So it's a 4-square breathing. Interesting enough, Jerry teaches Blue Courage to law enforcement officers, and they didn't do this, but what do you call it?
Stillness and silence. It's
So-
nothing, it's the same technique that we use with snipers. When snipers they do their breathing technique.
So it's
That's what
peak
it's about.
performance, right? So it teaches you how to calm your body down. I'm going to do it with you with, basically you're going to blow out, exhale. We're going to inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold for 4. You can exhale for 6 and hold for 2. So there's all kinds of different ways. But I will tell you this, the exhale and the holding on the exhale is activating your parasympathetic nervous system. So when you become aware that you have been triggered into fight, flight, or freeze, and you are activated, you can do this to get your body calmed back down and out of that. I think that's pretty important information. So exhale, we'll do 3 types. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. How was that? Was that hard? Some people have trouble holding it, you know, especially on the exhale. So you kind of got it, but if you just, you know, go around the square. We had a client come in, he came in for his EAP sessions, and he was a manager in a farm business, and he hadn't been sleeping for quite some time. And the one thing he was taught that session, the first session, was to do square breathing. And he came back the next week like, oh my gosh, I've been sleeping. And he hadn't slept for so long, he didn't understand how that happened. If you're not sleeping at night, do some square breathing or do a body scan. Look for a mindful body scan. You can Google them, you can find them everywhere. But now I just want you to close your eyes and check in. What's your stress level as we are ending the program? And just notice if it changed, if it's different, maybe it went up, maybe it went down. And then we're just going to end. I just want to tell you, you know, we do traditional therapy, but our foundation is based on mindfulness at Wholeness Healing Center. So everybody's trained in dialectical behavioral therapy, which is a core modality of that is mindfulness. And we do the traditional individual therapy, but mindfulness is often brought into that. And then we have our mindfulness programs, and then we have a whole another section of hypnotherapy groups and hypnotherapy individuals. Our 8-week program for adults, the classes are 2.5 hours long, including a day-long silent retreat. And so you're just learning to cultivate non-judgmental awareness in your present moments and develop a holistic approach to living a stress-filled world. It's not a class for pansies. It's not a fluff class, it's a hard class. We do a lot of practice work, and it requires a lot of commitment because it's 30 hours of class and then practicing every day. But I will tell you that it's life-changing. And so if you just take 1 or 2 tidbits today, that could shift your life in a good way if you incorporate it. And that's all I have. Thank you for having me.
Janie, I don't think you talked about your newsletters.
Yeah, we have lots of newsletters.
For 20 years, Janie has every other month, they do a newsletter at Wholeness Healing Center. We've done it for 20 years, but the thing is, these are free. She doesn't sell the advertising in them. The articles in here are written by the people that work within the facility. You can get this online by signing up for it every other month. And she has hard copies that she mails out, and it's all for the betterment of humankind. There's no money involved in this stuff. So there's a whole bunch of them up here, so come help yourself. As you're getting the homemade granola,
Jerry helped.
we miss Janie's little helper, and your stress ball.
Now I know why I bring him. He reminds me what I forgot. Thanks, Jerry.
Janie, you gotta get another example for mindfulness than a tornado. I mean,
Okay, because I just did it. I put you into stress, didn't I? So what better place to, okay, but did you you calm down after you did the square breathing?
Well,
and-
yeah.
See?
Yeah, but I'm thinking, when you come from California, you don't want tornado for
No,
example.
we don't want them in Nebraska either. Right.
We fill up that and we give it to them.
Okay.
And then
All right.
they're
This
gonna
is what
use
we're
it.
drawing for, Finding the Peace. This is Janie's book, so if you fill out your review, we'll
Yes.
draw names and pull 4 of them out.
So we have to put